Howdy! In this mini lecture we will discuss conservation biology. The student learning objectives of this mini lecture are assess the science and practice of conservation biology and analyze efforts to conserve threatened and endangered species. Conservation biology is a scientific discipline devoted to understanding the factors, forces, and processes that influence the loss, protection, and restoration of biodiversity within and among ecosystems. Conservation biologists are leaders in researching and developing innovative solutions to problems, such as habitat degradation and species loss. In this way, conservation biology is an applied and goal-oriented science that has very implicit values and standards. To be a conservation biologist, you must understand how evolution, extinction, and ecology interplay in complex environmental systems. An important outcome of genetic testing and analysis of an endangered population is the determination of the minimum viable population size. This is the size of a population required to maintain genetic diversity sufficient to perpetuate the population. If a population gets too small, inbreeding depression will occur, which produces weak and unviable offspring. Beyond the challenges associated with genetic diversity, conservation biologists can also address problems at the species level and the ecosystem level. In this way, conservation biologists work at multiple levels to preserve biotic diversity. The primary legislation in the U.S. aimed at protecting endangered species is the Endangered Species Act. This act prohibits private citizens and the government from harming an endangered species or its habitat. A specific term to this act is taking. Taking, as defined by Section 318 of the Act, means to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. All of these actions are illegal under the Endangered Species Act. However, there are several amendments and provisions to the Endangered Species Act that allow for some cooperation between landowners and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which oversees and regulates the Act. Specifically, habitat conservation plans and safe harbor agreements are provisions that allow an arrangement to be made with a private landowner who has endangered species on his property. If the private landowner voluntarily improves the habitat of the endangered species on one area of his land, the landowner is allowed to disrupt the species in a different area. The Endangered Species Act has been fairly successful in rehabilitating some species that were on the brink of extinction. For example, a pesticide called DDT was found to be the cause of the rapid decline of various birds of prey, such as the bald eagle, the peregrine falcon, and the brown peregrine. Thankfully, after the pesticide was banned for use in the U.S. and these birds were listed as endangered, wildlife managers were able to develop programs to restore the population size of these species and subsequently remove them from the endangered species list. An international effort has been made to designate certain geographic areas in the world as biodiversity hotspots. These designations help to prioritize areas for conservation efforts, research, and funding. The organization that maps out these hotspots is the non-governmental organization Conservation International. The hotspots are selected because they have an especially higher number of endemic species, which are species found nowhere else in the world. The criteria for biodiversity hotspot classifications are support at least 1,500 endemic plant species and have already lost 70% of its original habitat due to human disturbance. At one point, biodiversity hotspots covered 15.7% of the Earth. However, because of human activities, they now only covered 2.3%. This map shown here illustrates the location of the 34 hotspots in the world. The image on the right is that of a ring-tailed lemur, which is a primate endemic to Madagascar. This species has lost 90% of its forest habitat due to human population growth and extraction of natural resources. Some people feel we have an ethical obligation to preserve and protect the species we share our planet with. How you feel about this question would be part of your worldview. As we've talked about, conservation biologists are working tirelessly to try to protect and save endangered species and habitats. But I want you to know there's something you can do as an individual as well. You can be a citizen scientist. There are programs for a variety of species that connect concerned citizens with scientists working to help the species. Citizens can do things like help collect data on the species or its habitat, or volunteer to help clean up an area the species is known to visit. If you are interested in helping conservation biologists and other scientists gather important ecological and environmental data, Google Citizen Scientist. One of the biggest programs you will find when you do this is the Citizen Scientist program of Scientific America. Some programs even have applications you can download on your phone and use to monitor the appearance of songbirds or other species of interest to the conservation program. The data citizens collect is then used to drive research for the protection of the species. That concludes this mini lecture on conservation biology. Please review the weekly outline and complete the activities for this week per the schedule set forth in the outline. Thanks a giggle!